Watch the trees.
We need to talk.
Well, I hope you don't expect me to save you, because I don't do that anymore.
I'm not saying it's the worst film ever made. Or am I? Because here's the thing, Chad.
You asked for this, folks. Here we go. Here we go.
I don't know you, lady.
You know, in DC Comics, you're familiar with Darkseid, right? The classic villain created by Jack Kirby. In DC Comics, Darkseid, his entire thing, because he's ultimate evil, is that he's constantly searching for something called the anti-life equation. Superman 3 is the anti-life equation.
It's very nice. Thank you.
To any of you guys who saw it as kids or went to the theater...
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know how you did it. I don't know how you've existed this long with that in your brain.
In this case, I think I can go ahead and speak for Superman. I mean, he and I are pretty close, you know?
I felt embarrassed for Christopher Reeve. And it also, I will say, in a metaphoric sense, it shows the limits of Superman's power. Because Christopher Reeve could not lift this movie out of the mire it's in. He's trying, but he's just not strong enough to shoulder the weight of that terrible movie.
Superman 3, much more of a comic book. I miss the more romantic, even sentimental part of the character, but that's just my personal taste.
And he's doing all he can, and he's great to watch, but he's lost in that horrible story.
I can give as good as I get.
You can see it in some scenes, like this is often cited. People say, oh, you know, that's not a great movie, but I do really like the Superman battling himself thing.
Sure.
That seemed like a fragment. That could have been like a fragment of a much better story. I like that whole sequence. And the whole his portrayal of the Superman.
Yeah.
You could tell he was really having fun with that.
Yeah.
Because it's great. But there's really no narrative backbone to that whole thing. That's
a big problem.
There's hints of it because there's like really interesting dialogue during that junkyard fight, which we'll get to. You've been on my nerves for a while, Kent.
Been my nerves for a long time.
You know, there's like some internal conflict suggested there, but we don't know what it is because they never delve into it, really.
I actually don't agree with you there that's handled well.
I didn't say it was handled well.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I will say that having not seen it till now, I've known things about it. You can't be a Superman fan and not hear things about it. And of course, when it came out, I wasn't purposely avoiding knowledge of it. I just was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to be good. And I didn't go see it. There were things that from a distance, as in having not watched it, I was like, okay, that has to be good, right? For instance, like I was like, not just the character Lana Lang being introduced, which I thought was awesome from a distance. Ooh, Annette O'Toole, I like that actress. I bet she's a great Lana Lang. Now I've seen the movie. I still love Annette O'Toole, and she's absolutely beautiful. But their take on Lana was f***ed up. Again, I was like, dudes, you can't even do that right. You have a good actor who could really do a great Lana Lang, and she's not a good character. They botched it. And I'm like, oh, God, even that?
How do you think they botched Lana?
Lana comes off, I don't mind the whole, and the comics have done this, where Lana, she's got a bit of a chip on her shoulder since the world passed her by. In other words, it's like she got stuck in Smallville. She never had quite all this life that being with Clark would have represented, and Clark's gone off to the big city, making her a little bit sad, or making her a little bit like, well, I've had to make do, but life is... She is kind of whiny and lost, and she in this movie also just sits there kind of, gee, could you help us out, Clark? Could you string me along for a bit? And then Superman shows up and he's also stringing me along for a bit, and it's just it's their fault. It's the writer's fault. That script, David and Leslie Newman, I can't compare their work too much. I mean, I've seen a few of their movies that they're responsible for the scripts, but this is so poorly conceived and so poorly constructed, and it's garbage writing.
Yeah. There's really nothing that pays off. I mean, nothing really goes anywhere.
Nothing that pays off. Exactly. And even the bits that watching it, here's the only, well, no, there are things I can say positive, so I'll get there, but first I'm venting. Forgive me. But here's the deal. Here are things that happen in this movie. Clark goes back home to Smallville. First time since his parents passed. High school reunion. Sees Lana for the first time since high school. Okay, that happens. Also, there is a plot where, due to an odd kryptonite offshoot, that he is split into kind of his darker evil impulses and his good side, and they have to fight. He fights himself. That happens in this movie. There is a supercomputer that becomes sentient and wants to take over the world. Superman's in its way, and this computer can target anyone's weakest points, their weaknesses. These are all plot points in Superman 3. Any one of those, or all of them, would make fine Superman story. If you were a good writer, you could take any of those plot points. Oh, Jimmy going with Clark to Smallville. I loved more Jimmy and Clark time.
Yeah.
Love that concept.
Wonderful setup. Yeah.
All of these little things, if you were a good writer, this movie is insulting to children. You clearly can tell that they were like, no one watches these things but like 8-year-olds, so we're going to aim the humor at a bunch of kids. There are episodes of Super Friends that have far more dramatic weight than anything in Superman 3. And I'm sitting there going like, you guys don't get it. You are condescending to your audience, and you are disrespecting the character. I am just, again, and this is after a week that I'm this worked up about it.
Well, you know what kills me from watching this too, and we should after we finish venting, we should go back and do our thing where we go through the movie, because that's what people are watching for.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. From watching this, I know that we talked about, because we love Superman 2. We do. I think we made that clear in our last episode. And Lester did an actually really great job at piecing together what he was handed and the limitations that he had.
He did a very professional job.
The Directors Guild put him in a bind where he couldn't use everything that Donner had already shot, because Donner did not want to share credit. Therefore, he had to go and reshoot certain things just so he could earn his director's credit.
Yeah.
But anyway, to Lester's credit, when they were developing this film, initially Reeve did not want to come back. He did not want to do this movie. He had to be sweet talked into it by Lester. And because before this, the sound guidance had actually gotten Tony Danza, of all people, to come in and fill the role.
Yeah. I read that.
Infamously, right? So Lester's like, no, it has to be Chris. So to his credit, he knew, and he at least knew that much, that we can't make this movie without Chris. What I don't understand is why he didn't ask for a better script, because clearly Lester has been around long enough to know what a good script was. He's one of those directors who works good with good material.
I agree.
There are some very classic Lester indulgences in this anyway.
But there also is, he's just the wrong man for the job. Whether he is very competent, which he was. I mean, I don't want to make too many excuses for him. I'm sure he was lovely and delightful. I'm sure Richard Lester took it as seriously as he could. But the thing is, he's not the guy.
Dick Lester, who directed Superman 3, was born in this country, but he left in the 50s to go to England. This is the man who did Help and Hard Day's Night. Got a very wacky view of the world. And he's not so much into the sentimentality of the piece.
What grieves me is that, unlike today, where stars, depending on the star, even back in the 70s and 80s, some of them had enough clout to sit there saying, like, you want me? Well, I want to have some creative input on this thing. Christopher Reeve knows this is bad. He knows this is a bad script.
Congratulations, you have another hit with Superman 3. And
thanks a lot.
Maybe I'll see you on Superman 4.
I don't think so, but we'll see me other places.
And in today's world, if they were making this now, Christopher Reeve would be at least have enough clout that he could have basically said, like, bring me we'll make the movie when it's ready. I care too much about the character, and this is just dumb.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, it happened again. And the next movie too, which we'll get to. But
Well, here's the thing, and this is again, because I assume we'll cover 4, and I assume people will want to hear me get upset again. But I'll say, or maybe you don't. Maybe they're like going, "Don't make Brendan watch 4." Here's the thing: I actually anticipate liking 4 better than this, and I know 4 is notoriously bad and was made for $500. But I think that because Christopher Reeve's story input, and he was trying really hard to make that a better Superman movie, I think that I might like it more, even given how cheap ass it is.
yeah, it is more of an actual Superman story.
That is something this movie lacked.
As opposed to this, which is like a Richard Pryor movie with a subplot involving Superman.
Oh, and I also want to make this totally clear before we get into just going through the movie. I like everybody in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I like all of them. I love Robert Vaughn. I like Pamela Stephenson, who's playing the ditzy blonde, and I'm like, she's a funny British actress, and she's given nothing here, and she's I beep boop beep boop, okay, and she sleeps with Superman. God.
How about a little après-ski?
I don't know you, lady.
Anyway, I like obviously Richard Pryor.
When you're on fire and running down the street, people will get out of your way.
Just a few months ago, I was watching every one of his concert films because A, kind of was in a depressive state, and watching great stand-up comedy, especially done by someone as brilliant as him, was great. And it made me nostalgic. And I also watched Silver Streak and Stir Crazy, both of which still kill me.
Yeah.
The Gene Wilder combo with Richard Pryor can't be beat. So in other words, I don't put the blame on any, and actually Richard Pryor in bits in this movie, I mean, he's great, and he's really acting.
There were a lot of parts I was laughing at because he's just funny.
Hello?
And then he's given something terrible to do.
And then a lot of the jokes just don't land
Me and Superman?
because they're just really poorly written. But it's not his fault.
But at least Superman and Richard Pryor do the soul brother handshake.
Thank you, brother.
Oh my God. All right, so let's talk about the movie. Let's just get into it. Let's get this out of my system, and because I have been vomiting for a week.
I'm so sorry.
No. I mean, here's the thing. End of the
You
day,
literally got sick the day you watched it. You said, "Chad, I got a fever."
actually, that is true. I did come down with something the day after I watched it, and luckily it was just like a couple of days, 3-day flu. But honestly, I was like, I'm trying hard not to blame Superman 3. Okay, but again, I at least got to see some Christopher Reeve Superman that I had not seen before. And there's a couple of shots that I thought were pretty good. I mean, I'm going to find anything positive in it I can say, but there's really not a lot. All right, so it starts with one of the worst openings in film history.
Oh, God. Well, the first thing we see is Gus Gorman in the unemployment line.
Oh, that's right.
Name?
Gus Gorman?
And that actually is not really indicative at all of how insane it's going to get. Because that scene is actually a well-directed scene. And it's like, at this moment, you're just like, oh, this is kind of like Stir Crazy or any other Richard Pryor movie of the era.
It actually worked as a little bit of a character piece because, I mean, not that I thought this was going to be a grounded film at all, but I was sitting there going like, oh, and every man who's down on his luck in Metropolis. Okay, introduce me to this character. Obviously, he'll be important. I mean, the script tries to tell you all that, and the jokes don't land. Richard Pryor lands, but the jokes don't. It's a thing.
There's some moments. I mean, there were some moments I was winding back. Like, I remember this from when I was 14 years old and watching this on cable TV. And the little 14-year-old me going, hee, hee, hee.
Did you see it in theaters when it came out?
I'm sure I did. I don't remember. I think because I watched it on HBO or whatever so many times. This is back in the early 80s, the early years of cable TV where HBO and Showtime and Cinemax, they would have like 4 movies at a time. And they just
That's the thing I always tell people. They're like, it's like, they don't understand what it was like back then because it's like HBO had 4 movies and they would just show them. It was like, oh, it's Kramer versus Kramer time. Then it would be followed by battle beyond the stars, and then at night it'd be humanoids from the deep or HOTS.
And then Kramer versus Kramer would come on again. There'd be this
And then
constant
Kramer
loop
versus
going
Kramer
on.
would come on
Literally, that's
again.
how it was. It'd be on several
Yeah.
times a day.
So the credits happen over action instead of it being out in space. Just that horrible, long physical comedy misfire that's supposedly hilarious, and it's not at all. Oh, Jesus. The blind guy who loses his guide dog and he grabs onto a cement roller, and I'm like, God damn it.
Well, and this gets into part of the problem. They had a dramatically reduced budget for this. It got much worse in the next movie, but the first two movies were made for something like $55 million apiece.
Well, this is the last time Warner Brothers does it. The next time it's Canon Films.
Yeah, and
again,
they wound up with less budget than they were promised. This one was about $39 million, so it was a step down.
that is so weird.
So they didn't have the budget to do that much. Then that's no excuse for the script being as bad as it is. But like Superman's first super feat in this movie is literally flying across the street and ripping a sunroof off a car.
Yeah.
As opposed to the previous movie where he flies across the Atlantic and pushes an elevator into space.
Well, all I'm saying is that guy was drowning in his car on the street. So what else could he do?
Right.
Oh my God. It's the movie opens flop sweaty. Literally, it's trying to convince you that wacky fun times have arrived, and they haven't, Chad. They haven't. It's painfully unfunny, and it goes on so long. There's a bit where there are people in phone booths and they all get knocked down. I'm like, Lester loves that. It's like, we don't even need a Kryptonian villain using super breath to knock over a bunch of people on the street. Oh, and they're the wind up penguins, and one of them's on fire. So Clark Kent's like, oh, that's bad. And he uses super breath when no one's looking to blow it out. I'm like, God damn. This is a Superman movie?
And there are pets. I'm a little softer on. I'm not saying it's good, but I'm saying I'm a little. I've gone the process you're going through now. You're in your.
You've had decades.
You're in your rage stage.
Yes, I'm in my rage stage.
Yeah, I'm like I know the movie's bad. I don't watch it now, and I have to say it was worse than I remember, especially that opening you're talking about, the slapstick opening. It's like it's everything. Like all the reasons why Lester was not right for this job are summed up in that like 5-minute sequence, whatever.
Well, what's apparent from the very beginning, even before a plot has kicked in, what's apparent is, I mean, I also read some of the behind the scenes things, but it does feel like half-baked comedy sketches. And the Newmans were known for, that's, as you found out, you're reading all these other drafts of the first two movies, but essentially they were the ones who came in to give it a light touch, comedy, and that kind of nonsense. They essentially, I think, were, again, musical comedy writers. That was their deal. So it's clear from the get-go that they have decided thrills and action and Superman is not what the people wanted. What they want is goofy bullshit. So they decided, like, no, let's just double down. We're not going to try to awe you or give you moments of like, oh, wonderful Superman doing heroic things.
Seems fair.
It's just Superman wedged into a dumb, not even heist comedy. There's like, even the villain's plot is just like, what the fuck? Just like,
it's like he's trying to take over the world's resources, and then he gets distracted by this supercomputer thing. Like, oh, cool, let's build this now. For what purpose?
Yeah, essentially he's like, I'll find a savant, a computer savant, and then I will corner the world's market on coffee is the first thing. And then he basically was like, oh, that was great. Now I'm going to control the world's nuclear arsenal or something by having all these battleships directed to the middle of the ocean. And
No, the oil tankers, right.
Supporting
the oil market. Yeah.
That's right. Yes. He's
creating a oil crisis. Yeah.
By the way, I love the fact that Superman, when he welds it, just somehow can get all the oil back in there. It's like,
I actually,
that's a liquid.
That was very Silver Agey thing he did there.
Well, sure. And by the way, I mean, of course, the comics are the comics, and he probably in the comics would have literally just sucked all the oil into his gut and then spit it back into the ship.
Because there are a couple of scenes where like it's very classic. I could almost see definitely see Kurt Swan drawing both of these sequences where it's silly. He blows the oil back in the tanker.
Yeah.
I thought there was actually this one moment was actually kind of clever use of his powers where he's using super breath to keep the oil in as he's bending the bits back in place. Yeah. Like they're fragments. It's almost like there's like 4 different movies that they had ideas for, and
that's what I'm saying.
None of them are
it does
finished.
feel like Superman is kind of shoehorned in. And also they're writing around certain things. They're writing around their budget, as you pointed out. They're also writing around the fact that I don't think Richard Pryor showed up saying like, if I'm in it, it's going to have to be a Richard Pryor movie. I think he would have been fine being a character in a Superman movie because he just wanted to be there.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is that they decided they had to Richard Pryor vehicleize it. Not saying that his character shouldn't have been a big part of it, but geez. So it becomes sort of a two-hander where you're following Gus Gorman, a character we don't know, was never in the comics, and you're like, okay, great. And he's not even a very good Richard Pryor character, again, because they've written bullshit for him to say. But essentially, the Superman part is when he gets to the Daily Planet, there's Margot Kidder. Hope you're enjoying her, by the way, folks, because she's there for all 4 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
She's still great. She doesn't seem checked out. She's doing her Lois, and there's cute interplay. I liked them being in a room together. I liked Jimmy and Perry and Lois all in the room, and Clark being ignored as always. All this stuff is like good, but again, it's all nonsense. And for some reason, there's this thing about just so they can set up dumb jokes later. There's an inter-office lottery going on.
Right.
For a trip to, what made it confusing too is like, well, if they're going to write Lois out of the story, like she's going to the Bahamas on a vacation, I was sitting there going like, why do we have to introduce that couple? Why don't Lois be the one who wins the lottery and goes off, and she's the one that has all the mishaps and comes back as like, wow, that was no vacation, bump.
Well, and there's conflicting stories about this too, that Margot was one of the most vocal people who was not happy about Donner being fired.
Not happy at all about Donner being
so fired. There's some accounts say that she just didn't want to be in it, so they wrote her a smaller part, and that's why they brought in Lana to be the main love interest in this movie. And some people say it was just there was a scheduling conflict or something. So I don't know what is really true. It doesn't really matter.
I don't know. It doesn't matter because we don't get a lot of her.
Well, this is where there's some of the mishandling and lack of care with the canon and the story of the characters becomes really apparent. Is that in the previous movie, Superman is faced with this really difficult decision to erase, sort of not erase her entire memory, but erase any memory she had of their relationship.
Yeah.
When Superman does this in that movie, and to Lester's credit, he directed that scene. You could see that, and to Chris's credit, he's not happy about doing it. After he does the kiss, he's kind of choked up after he does this.
Yeah.
And we still don't, we made it clear in the last movie, we're not fans of that trick as a narrative.
The magic kiss is.
But there should have been at least a hint of that in this film, because there's that scene where she shows up. Oh, I'm going to Bermuda, and he's just like, oh wow, oh bikini, cool. But there's no trace of any emotion there for him about her. Then he goes off and starts flirting with Lana.
I don't think you could ever be a nuisance to me.
Yeah.
He just erased this other woman's memory because he's not allowed to have relationships with a human being.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there going, what are you doing, Clark? Clark, what are you doing?
Not does he flirt with her, he gives her a diamond ring at the end. Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, complete lack. That's what I'm saying, the lack of care.
I will say this in its favor, or at least to that point, is that the idea we have now of sequels where they fully build on what came before and try to develop long form stories, still a pretty recent thing. Back then you put a number after it and it was like a reset button. It's just like, here's another adventure of, and they're not going to refer back to much. Now, of course, 1 and 2, since they were made at the same time, essentially, and were composed as, in a way, one piece, that's slightly different. But I think they literally would have forever, like the comics, just kept coming back around. Like, nothing really sinks in. There's no weight to anything. So it's just, here's another Superman adventure. Lois is in it, and he'll maybe wistfully look at her for half a second, but what's this, Lana Lang?
There's no that's what I'm saying. There's no wistfulness at all in that scene.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's really not. But at the
There really
end,
isn't.
you do get Lois and Lana looking at each other cattily. So you get that. And that's the 50s comics come back to life. You're like, yeah. It's like, oh, who's this?
It's a shame because the casting of Annette O'Toole.
No, that's what I'm saying is that
she actually does resemble the younger actress who played her in the first film too. She kind of resembles.
Well, yeah. I mean, she's gorgeous. And she looks like Lana Lang. And I know how good an actress she is. And sadly, they don't give her a good character. It's like, what is the point? It's find a good actress to say nonsense. But we're not there yet. So basically, Clark goes to Perry pitching him an idea for a story. And I got to say, if I had been Perry, I would have gone, no one wants to read that. But anyway, Clark, who has covered world events and real crime and big stories, is like, what about a story about a guy going back to his high school reunion? And Perry's like, what? And he's like, does this just mean you just want to go back to wherever, Smallville? And he's like, well, yeah, I thought it might be interesting. He's like, all right, but take Olsen. Take one of my best photographers out to Kansas to take pictures of people dancing in a gym. That's awesome.
Gee, thanks, Mr. White.
But yes, again, as far as mechanics of moving the story forward, we now have his story set. He's going back to his high school reunion. Lois is going off to the Bahamas on a vacation, shows him a bikini.
Bermuda.
That's writing her out. And then there's the whole thing about the lottery. There's this sort of writing little theme throughout it about, boy, machines and computers today, they just, they make things better, or do they? They make things kind of worse because they're like, oh, you have to pull the balls with the numbers out, Perry. Can
we get a computer to do this? Right, yeah.
Yeah, so some Dorfus in the Planet staff wins the trip to
South America. I can't believe my luck.
Yeah, the couple that wins that contest, the woman who plays the wife, she's actually the same actress.
I saw that.
The same actress who plays the waitress.
She was the waitress in the Alaskan Diner. The Alaskan Diner.
There's a few actors, like the guy who's jumping around again. Then sorry guys. The guy, I think he's a sheriff or something. When the bus gets stopped on the way to Smallville.
Yeah.
The guy that they talk to as they're getting off the bus is one of the NASA controller guys. The guy who's with John Ratzenberger in Superman 2. Oh, and there's also the guy plays the sheriff deputy.
Holy skunk sweat.
Is the guy later who is at the ATM and keeps spitting money out. So there's a lot of repeat actors, including the guy who spills his coffee out. He's in the beginning. The kind of dopey looking guy.
I wasn't tracking that, but again, that's also it's a money saver.
At the same time, we've been introduced to Gus Gorman, who is unemployed, and he, through twist of fate, discovers that he is a savant in computers.
He ends up literally answering an ad, and it's for learning computers. And he figures out a way to do things that other people, and they're like, how'd you know to do this? He goes, I don't know. I just knew. And again, he's actually playing a character. He's acting. Things don't get really stupid wacky till like later on when he's doing the patent thing. And
but the way that they portray computer stuff in this movie was so typical of the era, because there's a little bit of war games in this, and I like war games. I love that movie. But there's like where the computer makes noises that it wouldn't normally make noises. It's making little Atari sounds and stuff.
But that's still true today. Literally today, you'll see people in movies where they're like trying to enter programs and stuff, and they're little boop boopy doop boop boop. I'm like, computers don't go boop boopy doop.
Yeah.
So don't.
This is an example of this whole premise of him being this computer savant who figures out how to do this stuff. There's like it's like a little bit of a hint of this could be an interesting story where this is going. And
that's what I'm saying. There are all these little things that could,
like many other threads. It just the stories just they don't go anywhere. None of them go anywhere.
Well, okay. if this movie has one positive legacy.
Hey, what is this?
First paycheck?
Besides just more Christopher Reeve Superman.
There are always fractions left over in big corporations, but they round it down to the lowest whole number.
The only reason this movie should have ever existed is it did give a big plot point to Office Space.
Each withdrawal, it's a fraction of a cent. That's too small to notice.
Which is one of my favorite comedies. And the whole thing about the rounding off and the extra pennies that are left over and how they round down and someone takes advantage of that. And in Office Space, they're literally going like, like in Superman 3. They're literally saying that in that movie.
It's like Superman 3. Superman 3? What?
So that's a clever little idea. And so that's how he gets the attention of the guy at the very top. The guy who owns the business that owns the business that owns the business that owns where Gus works is Robert Vaughn. They eventually find the fact that Gus Gorman has been cutting himself separate checks with all the leftover fractions of pennies that just float out into the nether sphere, and he's making quite a bundle for himself. And actually, again, that's clever. And you sit there going like, you're kind of rooting for him. You're like, way to go, Gus. He's like, I think there should be another check for me in there. And it's like $80,000. He's like, oh.
Yeah, I love that. That's one of the moments that makes me laugh is that, oh.
Yeah.
I love Richard Pryor.
By the time Robert Vaughn figures, he's like, so is it? Who is it? Who did this? Because they do figure it out accounting wise.
What?
I know I'm jumping ahead. And then they look literally outside the skyscraper and Gus pulls up in a sweet ass, ride
or whatever. Yeah. This is the thing I thought was funny. It was like a little bit of a, like, it's silly to complain about plot holes in this movie.
Oh, but, yes. Yes. In fact, I think you should see yourself out, sir.
Yeah. But the whole thing, the half-cent thing, very clever. But then when he gets to that scene where, like, somebody's embezzling money, it's like, well, who is it? I don't have no idea. Maybe it's the guy who got the $87 check. Is there no record of that?
They would have had to. They probably have hundreds of employees. It would take them a while to figure out. Like,
sure, well, that's
Gus
something.
Gorman guy.
It could have been one more line of dialogue saying they've erased the records, so we can't trace it to see who this.
He's a savant, but apparently not that clever.
So, and then of course he says, "Well, only if he's a complete idiot would he tip his hand." And of course, right then he pulls up in this Ferrari.
Point, he's driving up. Yeah, and when he gets called to the boss's office, and again, we're jumping around. This is us following the Gus storyline because they do keep intercutting between these.
Yes.
The Gus storyline, Robert Vaughn calls him into his office, and of course, Gus is like, "Oh no, I'm getting fired. Oh no," and Robert Vaughn's like going, "Actually, I think you're quite brilliant. How about you work directly for me?"
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You're obviously good with computers," and blah, blah, blah. And that's the whole thing.
Yeah. There was one moment. This is one of the moments that did make me laugh because it was a good opportunity for Richard Pryor to be Richard Pryor, where he accidentally triggers the revolving wet bar.
Yeah.
You get my drift?
So stupid, but I love it.
Well, his read of the lines and stuff is funny, but you just sit there shaking your head going like, yeah, we also young Frankenstein.
Put the candle back.
It's like, it's the same bit.
It is. Yeah, it is.
It's like, oh, I'm trapped behind the revolving thing.
It is totally dumb. It's totally dumb. But those moments make me laugh, not because it's in a good Superman movie, because it's not, just because it's Richard Pryor doing comedy well.
Yeah.
That's what he was good at.
Yes.
So.
And he did. He made me laugh a couple of times, and it had nothing to do with the material. It's just like, because he could deliver a line, even a piece of crap piece of dialogue, but he could deliver it in a certain way, and you're like going, oh, that was great. There are a few of those. Yeah. But back to the Superman story, Clark does get on a bus. I love the fact that, the Daily Planet has apparently spared no expense. Clark and Jimmy are on just a Greyhound, and this is
all the way from Metropolis to Kansas.
And it's kind of funny. I mean, I do like them spending time together. But the gag is that Jimmy just is a terrible traveling companion because he won't shut up. And you
Clark
can
is
see
bored.
Clark Kent, the most powerful being in the universe, is essentially sitting there going like, yeah, good story about your aunt. Woo!
He's talking about basting turkeys or something like that.
Yeah, he's like, oh no, I told you that's Uncle Carl's wife, and yep, you sure did. You told me that, so that's good. And then, as often happens, a chemical plant bursts into flames.
Yeah.
Now, what I found really, one thing that did tick me off, speaking of plot holes in a terrible movie, is they're pretty much almost to Smallville. I thought maybe they were somewhere halfway in between, but later on there's a reference to the same lake that he uses. So
they're nearby. Yeah.
So what bugs me is Superman shows up when he changes and all that, and they go, he's like, oh, and they're like, we're out of water, and he's like going, what can I do about that? And they're like, well, there's that lake over there.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's from Smallville.
I had the same thought.
He would know where the local lake is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
come on.
So,
yeah.
There's a chemical fire, and Jimmy's like, I'm gonna get closer because I'm an intrepid photographer. That's all classic Superman.
What's funny about that moment when he sneaks in? He sneaks in and he hides behind a fire truck, and a cop just watches him. He doesn't even do anything. It's like, why are you even hiding? Just run in. No, they don't care.
No, they don't care because I think the way he then gets in brilliantly is by climbing up the fire ladder on the truck, and of course he's gonna fall and break his leg and cry out for Superman. And actually, that's one of my favorite shots is when Superman's like, oh, Jimmy needs my help. And he just walks through the fire to get to Jimmy. And I'm like, that's a badass Superman shot. I was like, that looks cool. And then he's like going, I've told you, Jimmy, you got to watch out for yourself. Thanks, Superman. It's just like in the comics where no one goes, why aren't you in Metropolis? Why are you here? And then Superman's doing all kinds of things in Smallville, Kansas for like a week. And no one's like, why are you in Smallville, Kansas for a week? Who else from Metropolis is hanging out here? Hey, Clark Kent's here. But anyway, so
I do like too that he uses X-ray vision to diagnose his broken leg.
Oh no, I like that too. He goes, "Yep, you fractured your tibia,"
and that was nice. And there's, to get this out of the way right now, there's a lot of really nice flying wire work in this.
There's some decent shots.
Why? Because Christopher Reeve himself directed all of the flying shots.
Yeah.
Well, did you like the flying this time?
I loved it.
Oh, good, because I directed it.
She was very proud of.
Well, by this point, he just knows how to move in those wires.
Yeah.
There's some really sweet takeoffs and landings where you're just like going, that guy figured it out.
He really
figured
did.
out how Superman flies.
Yeah. It's about the angles that they use to shoot. That's part of it.
Yeah. In fact, that shot in the scene, he does a thing where he's not high off the ground. He kind of just right at eye level.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that was a pretty good shot.
When he takes off to go to the lake too, in that shot, I kept winding the one back. I was like, God, that was good. When he takes off to go to the lake.
To tell you the truth, I got no problem except for sometimes having worked at Warner Brothers is a bit of I'm like, oh, I recognize that. The lake side where he's standing there and then kneels down and not the shot from behind him where you see an actual lake and then they do the bad, I've frozen it over with my super breath, but the very clearly artificial, I'm standing on a lake's shore thing. That's the backlot of Warner Brothers.
Oh,
I'm sitting there going like, I've stood there.
Yeah.
But it's just like going, oh, yep, I know where he is. But yeah, so he freezes it, and what I was saying is I have no problem with how goofy that is because
very
it's
Silver
straight
Age.
out of the comics.
Yeah.
He
Bronze Age, I should say.
Oh, also they do bronze and silver.
Yeah,
certainly, and Byrne probably also had him do it at some point in the 80s. But yeah, freezing a body of water, lifting it, and then dumping it over a fire.
Yeah.
Great. I like the way it just comes down as like pretty heavy rain where they're like, oh, geez. I kind of expected him to hit it with his heat vision as it dropped because that's not really far enough for the whole big block of ice to have turned into, again, plot holes.
I mean, that was... it's still that device worked well. I thought even if even for a bad movie, it would have been cool in a good movie too.
Also, as far as plot, hey, the Newmans are doing their job. They set up the fact that there is a particular type of acid in this chemical factory that has to be kept at a certain temperature, because if it goes over, if it gets too hot, it'll burn through everything. It'll burn through the crust of the earth. And actually, I really do like, this is just Christopher Reeve and the other actor who's playing the chemist
Scientist.
who's like, I've got to
Yes.
stay in here.
Yes.
But that scene where it's literally like Superman asking an expert, like, what is this? What is this compound? And he's like, well, if it does it, he goes, so, okay. I just like Superman going like, and when he's talking to the fireman too, it's like, so what do you think about the, I love it.
It reminded me of what's his name? Is it Hamilton? Dr. Hamilton from the comics?
Oh, yes. Emil Hamilton.
Emil Hamilton.
Yes.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of that.
Well, I just like when Superman is like, I will defer to someone who knows more about something, or someone who's been on the scene longer. Like, I just showed up. Please fill me in. I love that because it always shows, and I've always loved this in the comics too, when Superman says like, no, I'm just part of the team. It's like, I'm going to talk to the police chief and get his opinion instead of just fly in and fix everybody's problems.
And exactly. I do like that too, that all the officials that he meets, the scientist, the cop, the fireman.
It's just like in the first
They may have
movie.
never met him before. They may have never met him before. But like, oh, good, you're here. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Let me bring you up to speed.
Yes.
They don't go, oh my God. You know, it's not
well,
none of
at
that.
this point, I mean, they're excited that Superman's there, but they do immediately just go, Superman, this is what we need.
Yeah. It's established that he's been around for a while.
So I love the fact that the world is just ready that he just might show up to help out.
Yeah.
It's like in the first movie, like, gentlemen, is that man going to be okay? I just love that stuff. That's
by the way,
I know.
I forgot to mention that when we covered that movie, that moment in the first
movie.
movie.
Is that your favorite one-line guy?
I think it may be overdubbed dialogue for the guys.
Oh,
yeah. Like, is that man going to be okay?
Gentlemen, is that man all right?
Yeah. That's really hilarious.
Yeah, don't worry about it, Superman. He's great.
Just the line reading cracks me up. Anyway.
So, okay. See, that's us finding something positive. And it really just boils down to a little bit of care in the script, but also Christopher Reeve just being awesome. So,
yeah.
Now they get to Smallville. And I have to say, this chunk, just Clark in Smallville, meeting up with some of the high school people, and a lot of people going like, oh, Kent, right? Like, again, he was overlooked. I do love the fact that they blew up everyone's, yearbook pictures, and there's teenage Clark, and you're like going, no one's looking at that, glasses less, no glasses on, young Clark going, holy shit, he's Superman.
Right.
But the whole like introduction of Lana, the whole like him just like, oh my God, that's Lana from high school. And in this version, and we saw it in the first movie, in this version, they weren't the best of friends. They liked each other, but there was that, I'm a nerd and she's the cheerleader. So in this case, they're not coming back together. It's like this case, she's like, wow, Clark Kent. So, I mean, she does say later, it's like, I always could talk to you, but in the comics, they were boyfriend and girlfriend, man.
Yeah, well, it's hinted in obviously in the first movie we see Brad. It's the same Brad.
Yeah, the same character, not the same actor.
Brad, who is essentially cock-blocking young Clark in the first movie.
Yeah,
by preventing we don't see it. It's off camera. He knocks over all the stuff he'd already sorted, so he can't go with them.
Brad.
To the party.
She actually says, "Oh, Brad."
And you can see, especially in the extended cut of that film, there's a lot more shots of Lana riding in the car, and you can see she's all pissed off that she couldn't spend more time with Clark. So she had real feelings for him, and they do play it to the credit. They do play on that in this movie, that she looks up at a picture of him in that scene and goes, that one that got away, it's the way she thinks.
They're doing the whole, and if they had been better writers and had decided that even a superhero movie can have some emotional weight to it, they make her, a regretful person. And that's a pretty common thing. And she's like the small town girl who never escaped. And the only reason she ever married Brad is that he was the only one there. So
Well,
I mean,
I don't think they were ever married.
she didn't marry Brad?
He's the only. She says that he's the only one who's asking. Everybody else is married at this point. Her kid was from her previous.
Okay.
We don't know who
Yes.
that is. They
Right,
do. I think
okay.
they do mention his name, but we never see him.
Yeah, she's got a kid in this one. Man.
So Brad is just her ex from high school, who's just a pain in the ass.
And we get to see Clark basically playing like, I'm your mom's friend, and I'm going to be your friend too. What do you want? Ice cream? What do you want? Superman's autograph? You're going to love me, kid. And if you love me, your mom's going to love me.
Yeah. And this is where I was going, Clark, what are you doing?
I know.
You just erased Lois's memory. Stop.
Well, I will say, what could they have done? Unless Lois was still like a character in this movie, there's the only thing you could have played off that would have been, well, she's just my high school buddy. You always got to have Clark kind of going like, oh, Lana, maybe it should have been Lana. Maybe I should have tried that. I could have kissed her and made the memory go away. Why couldn't I have had sex with her in the big clamshell bed in the fortress?
Well, this is where they again, because the script seems like a not even a first draft, like almost like a half first draft of just half baked ideas.
This is a shoddy script. I can't state that strongly enough. It's
because
shoddy.
when he splits into two later, and apparently it seems to be very clear from the dialogue that it's supposed to be some kind of manifestation of an internal conflict he's having.
Yes.
But over what, we don't know, because they never explore that.
We're not
There's
there
an
yet.
opportunity where there's an opportunity there for what they discarded from the previous film, his regret over what happened with Lois. They could have run with that to have that be what's tearing him apart inside.
If you want, well, it could have been one of the things, but if you wanted to have that as a concept with him being torn in two and fighting in an internal battle, they should have been talking. There should have been dialogue. It should have been Clark talking to Superman. They do exchange maybe, like you said, the whole thing about, man, I've wanted sick of you.
You've been on my nerve for a long time, or something like that.
Maybe there should have been an actual discussion instead of just them hitting each other in a big junkyard.
Because they imply very strongly that there's self-loathing there, because that scene in the bar where he's flicking peanuts and destroying bottles right after that, he uses heat vision to melt his reflection. Because he's mad at himself internally for some reason. We don't know why.
By the way, the Leaning Tower of Pisa framing device.
Oh, and I have a story about this too.
Ending the fucking movie with that? Get out of my town and your town and every other town.
This is the history behind the Leaning Tower Pisa thing. That was actually originally, it was in Mankiewicz's script for Superman 2, and it was going to happen for a completely different and much stupider reason. Although I need to go back because I have not read through all this different drafts of the script thoroughly yet.
Yeah.
This may have been an idea that originated from the Newman script that preceded Mankiewicz.
Well, here's the thing. The idea of Superman gone bad, and one of the things he does is that, again, that idea is not bad, but then they turn it into like comedy bits.
Right.
I mean, the idea of him like, fuck your Leaning Tower.
I do.
Him cutting to like the people with the models, and they're like,
hey,
what do you do? Hey. And in the movie, he's like, oh, Superman, man. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, I know. Originally, that was going to happen in Superman 2, not because he was split into an asshole version of himself. In Superman 2, it was going to be when he's lovesick, when he flies. Lois is at the fortress, and he says, anything you want, and he doesn't ask her what she wants, and flies around the world to get dinner and flowers and stuff. In a love drunk haze, he flies over Italy and just happens to zip around the Leaning Tower of Pisa to make it go.
Because he's giddy, and it makes it
to make it stand erect. Get it? To make it stand erect,
because perhaps his penis is engorged due to his love for Lois and knowing what's about to happen.
I suspect this was a Newman idea that didn't get filmed for 2, so they brought it back for this movie, although it happens for a totally different reason.
All right, I'm looking up where the Newmans are buried.
but Mankiewicz kept it, and it's in Mankiewicz's draft. They didn't shoot it, but who knows what they would have done if they'd been able to. So anyway, it's like, that's one of those things like,
well, thank God they thought it was good enough to hold off till we did Superman 3.
Jesus Christ.
and again, Reeves' portrayal of jerk Superman is great throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
And when he's pushing it, he's like got this sort of, jerk smirk on his face, like, yeah, screw this thing. And then he does this gesture. He does this gesture at the guys, like, he's trying to, y'all.
I love the whole, just lounging up at the top of the Olympic Stadium and blowing out the fire.
Yeah.
And he's like, what are you going to do? It's kind of great.
It is.
I mean, but it's only because of him.
Right. Right.
That's it. Okay. So where are we?
We're in Smallville, I think.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So like I was saying, I do like their scenes together because, again, this is some of the most extended Clark acting he got to do in all the movies, and he's really going to town. Just like I'm sure he enjoyed doing this side of Clark, and I'm sure he liked being evil Superman. So meanwhile, where the f is Jim? Oh, that's right, his leg got broken.
Why do I have to do this? You're lucky I didn't fire you.
Did he just go immediately back to Metropolis, by the way?
Apparently, yeah. I think he's just
so
going.
I guess the paper ran the story without any photos.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jimmy.
And what does he come home with? A broken leg and 12 melted rolls of film. It was hot.
This is a lot of people say this is one of the things about Superman 3 that's kind of nice is that, you already said it. When he gets to Smallville, his Clarkness is not quite as overstatedly goofy as it is in Metropolis.
I mean, he's still being.
They already know him
nebbish.
there.
Yeah.
So he does have some moments, like when he goes out to dance with Lana, and he has this like Jerry Lewis moment on the dance floor where he's, which is, I like that little moment.
It's the gag of like, come on, dance, and he's like, oh, and you're like, can Superman really actually dance awesomely? And he's like, I'm just gonna go ahead and Jerry Lewis it, because he's like, oh,
it's like Cinderfella.
And of course, they get a Beatles song, because if there's one thing Lester was good for, is just calling them up, going like, "Could I use one of your songs?"
Beethoven.
Hi, Brad. Hi, Ken.
Guess what? Brad's still an asshole. Big shocker. And also, apparently, a serious alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, also really not cool later in the movie where Gus is like, I'll take advantage of that because I have to break into this building. And he's just like, I'm an alcohol salesman, and here's a big, and it's like, Jesus.
That is one whole
does
sequence.
Not age well, where he's like, you can have all the booze you want. And the guy's like, great. And Brad's just got these huge circles under his eyes, like, I've been drinking since 1979.
Yeah. The way that scene is, that if you took that scene out and you moved it to like a Cannonball Run movie or something.
Oh, sure.
I like that scene, not because it's in a Superman movie, but because it's Richard Pryor doing a gag, and he does it very well. The whole thing with him trying to figure out how to get both cards in, and and also the scene before that where he's getting him drunk. This is one moment where the 14-year-old kid in my brain lit up again, because I remember watching this late at night at my dad's house on HBO, whatever it was, where he's like, this Singapore wing is slang, Singapore slang. There's not enough vodka in it. He's like, there's no vodka in it.
I think we need to address the fact that you have a 14-year-old in your brain.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about
He's still
that.
in here. But the moment where he goes,
Here, put some vodka in it. What do you know, hey.
Hey. That line reading, that was tailor-made for 14-year-old kids to laugh at.
Sure. You know what's funny? Alcoholics. But anyway, I will say Richard Pryor.
You thought I was drunk too, didn't you?
One of the best drunk actors ever.
Yes.
And obviously he had, characters in his stand-up. It was like, I was this street guy and the drunk guy, and he's really funny.
Yeah, but that whole bit where the computers, the way that's set, was actually pretty well designed. But that was kind of clever, that whole deal.
Basically, we get kind of, every time we cut back to Clark he's just kind of dating Lana. They're hanging out, and he's met the kid. The kid likes Clark, but turns out he's a huge Superman fan. He's like, you know him? He's like, well, I live in Metropolis, and yeah, I've met him several times. And he's like, could you get his autograph? He's like, I think I could do that, and it's not because I'm trying to sleep with your mom. And so that's really all that's going on in the Smallville sections. Is we just keep cutting back to that, and they also shoehorn in like, little Billy, or whoever the fuck his name is, he's gonna get run over by a thresher.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, he's saved. It's really good that Superman's spending so much time in Kansas.
I thought I was watching that scene a couple of times. I was struck by after he saves them from the thresher, Superman shoots this look at the guy who's driving the thresher, like
yeah, but I gotta say,
doesn't say anything.
I would never seen that kid under all that wheat.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah. Superman kind of gives him the evil eye.
Not his fault, but that again, that's Lana's kid. Lana keeps mentioning things like, "Geez, I wish I had the courage and the money to get out of Smallville," and that's one of the things I didn't like about her character. They are kind of intimating in the script that she's sort of looking at Clark like, any hints? Like she's looking at sugar daddy situation like, sure would be nice if someone could get me out of this rut.
Yeah.
You sure are nice, Clark. I'm like, I don't like that version of Lana. But anyway, and every time we come back to Gus, he is working with oh God, what's the character's name? Robert Vaughn's character. Bobo Lex Luthor. Yeah, it's like Webster.
I think it's Webster. Yeah,
Westco.
Ross Webster, I think.
Maybe so. Yeah, and they're doing kind of like a LexCorp because the name of his company is something like Websco or something.
Yeah, Ross Webster.
See, that's how much the plot really sunk in. But yes, he's brought Gus in, and he's kind of doing the Faustian. Well, you could have anything you want, and if you're working for me and we take over, you're going to be the richest man in the world, and this will be great. How does he hijack the weather satellite? That's also a thing.
That's what he's doing when he gets Brad drunk.
Right. That's right.
It's a subsidiary company of Webco.
But why would he need, if he owns the company, why does he need this guy to
That's what I don't understand. I was thinking about that. I was like, why does he need to trick his way in there? It's his company.
But the whole reason he uses the weather satellite is, again, instead of like Lex Luthor, where he's like, I'm taking over the world. Instead, it was like, I will freeze all the coffee fields in Brazil. And that is, that's where the people are vacationing from the planet. That's also, we can have the big payoff of them having a terrible vacation that they're going to complain about when they get back to the planet.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And then Gus Gorman's recounting of what happened on TV, because Ross turns the TV off before Superman comes on the news. So he thinks he's won, and he misses the part where he didn't win because Superman undid the damage.
Superman came down. He was like, and he was all like, because they've made Gus, who is participating in criminal activities. I actually think Superman lets Gus off pretty easy at the end.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe he's not responsible for deaths, but still, he actively participated. But so apparently they've made Gus in this movie similar to Richard Pryor, like an actual Superman fan, because he is sitting there going like, you didn't count on the big man. Because you can't stop him. And while he's doing this, I guess, thanks to the weather satellite, in the middle of Metropolis, the Webster skyscraper has a ski slope on the top of the roof, no matter what time of year it is. And that, like a ski chalet. By the way, we haven't even mentioned the running character of his sister that everyone keeps making jokes about, like how mannish she is. Like, oh, geez, your sister's ugly, Robert Vaughn. And she's actually the smartest of the two of us. Whatever, it's like, great.
I didn't know your mom was going to be here.
Yeah, I didn't know your mom was going to be here.
I'm his younger sister.
I'm his younger sister. And you're like, okay, great. So she is like equally criminal genius. And she's downplayed because apparently she's not attractive. And then you have the blonde bimbo who is this movie's Miss Tessmacher,
who is secretly a genius for no reason whatsoever.
For no reason.
Another thing that doesn't pay off.
Yeah, it doesn't pay off. It's just every now and then she'll say, "Oh, well, why doesn't everyone ever talk about the quantum relativity of blah, 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 blah?" And you're like, where did that come from? Jokes. That's where it came from. Joke Town. And again, that actress who was briefly on Saturday Night Live, she was a cast member of Saturday Night Live for a season.
Yeah.
She's British, and she's doing a very good American bimbo voice. I like her. I've seen her in things. She was in History of the World Part 1, Mel Brooks. She's great. And of course, she's hot. That was the whole thing. Is like, we'll put her in a blonde wig and she'll bounce around in bikinis. There you go. A little something for daddy. A little something for daddy. Yeah, he took the kids to see Superman 3, but he's got a little something there for him. Oh, I hate this movie.
Yeah.
So these are our villains, and they're all played for jokes. I mean, Lex in the first two movies, especially the first movie, he is quippy, and he, there are jokes, but they land, and you never mistake him for a goofball. He's deadly serious, as we pointed out before. That's why I love that performance, and it was also written well. Here, Robert Vaughn's character, he's playing it like he's a villain on Wild Wild West. He's just sort of like, and I know Robert Vaughn was capable of many things, and he was Napoleon Solo, so that alone, Man from U.N.C.L.E., come on. But here he's basically given the instruction, act like you're in an episode of Fantasy Island. So he's doing TV bad guy. I'm a TV bad guy.
Yeah.
And when I take over, and when I have all the oil in the world.
And that's the thing is, like you say, that Luthor's plan in the first movie was so well delineated, and like, here's exactly what I'm trying to do.
It is still just about real estate, but at the same time, it's pretty devious, and you're like, yeah, that's a Luthor plan.
Yeah, and it's very clear what his goal is in the first movie. This one is like, let me do this. Okay, now I'm going to do this, and let's build a supercomputer for no apparent reason.
That is the problem right there too. Not only is the villain not well formed, you don't get an idea really of who he is at all or backstory. His plan is just whatever they need for that moment. It is not well set up. And screenwriting 101, you need to at least state what the stakes are of a movie.
Yeah.
And, Superman just like, oh, I'll show up and beat this thing. Now I'll show up and beat this thing. So basically, after Superman thwarts the thing with the coffee, and Webster goes on to like, now I'm going after oil. First, I need to get rid of Superman. That's your job, Gus. Kill Superman. And they figure out kryptonite yet again. I thought the world knew about kryptonite by this point. But here they're like going, pieces of his home planet the radiation from it could. I'm like, doesn't the entire world know about kryptonite?
This is one part where I thought was a little bit clever, that they use a satellite spectrometer to point it at wherever Krypton is. Canonically, in the movies, it's in another galaxy, so they wouldn't be able to see that far to get but okay, whatever. So anyway, but yeah, he uses a spectrometer to figure out what the molecular composition or the atomic composition of kryptonite would be. But there's one thing that they can't; it's unknown. So he fills it with tar.
Yeah. So the kryptonite they get is not real kryptonite, or not the pure kind. They've fabricated, and he goes, I don't know if this is going to work on Superman, but we'll give it a shot. So
they have a brilliant plan.
Superman is given the key to Smallville, and then, and no one questions this, an army jeep shows up with someone cosplaying as General Patton. Basically, this was an excuse to like, hey, this'll kill Richard. You saw George C. Scott in Patton, right? And he stands there and he gives the big speech. He's got the helmet on. You're going to do that. You're going to mock it. And it's dumb. What I love is that this town doesn't know who this is. Because he's wearing a costume, they just let him get up on the bandstand. I love the fact that no one's like, sir, this is you need to sit down. No, he just walks up there and he's like, the U.S. Army is thanks you for all you've done, Superman. And he's putting on a voice like, Superman, you're the best. And here's something we've made just for you. Superman is very uncareful because he hasn't scanned this box with his X-ray vision.
Well, and this is where it's like, what exactly were they planning? Because if the kryptonite was actually pure and did what it was supposed to do, and if Superman would have reacted the way he did in the first film, which is immediate, like, oh fuck, how were they going to get away with that? Where they were surrounded by people and everybody would have seen that the rock is killing him.
You know, like same way that John Wilkes Booth. He just would have jumped off a thing and then gone, Sic Semper Tyrannis, and escaped with a broken foot. Again, we're worrying about plot holes in this bullshit movie.
This is where my memory of the film was warped, because I reading comics at the time, it's 83. I had in my memory, because I knew, that's just kind of like red kryptonite, what the effect it has on him. Or gold kryptonite, or one of those weird variations.
Red is the unpredictable one.
The unpredictable one, right? So I had it in my head that, it was red, but no, it's green in the movie. I'd totally forgotten that. Yeah, but the effect it has is essentially like it's a red kryptonite story.
Well, it shocks Gus because there is no effect, and Superman, or at least immediately, Superman just handles it like. But I also wonder why Superman would be like, if he sees it. And even if it's not hurting him, it's a glowy green rock. Wouldn't he just toss that into the sun? Like, thank you, but I would rather not accept that. Whatever. He stands there like, what a wonderful present. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then within hours, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
And his costume gets darker. What's funny is evil Superman costume, the colors of it, exactly the same as Brandon Routh's costume.
Yeah, I know. I thought about that. They faded his colors. Yeah.
They darkened them, and I was like, wow, that is the exact red, the exact blue, the exact like mustard yellow that they did for Brandon Routh. And he's got the stubble, and I love Bad Superman, but this is an interesting and fun bit for the movie. But again, it's all played for kind of laughs. I do love the shot of like everyone in that bar when evil Superman's just sitting there, just glowering and drinking beer that obviously can't affect him, though he kind of is acting drunk, but he's just sitting there like flicking those peanuts that are shattering bottles. And I like everyone's like going, they're all just sort of shirking back. You would do that too if a godlike being showed up in your bar and is just like, I'm fucking pissed.
Yeah. What's funny is right before that, the scene is set up where you see people outside the bar, like crowd around going, hey, look in here.
Yeah.
But then it cuts inside the bar and he's sitting there, and everybody inside the bar couldn't care less that he's sitting there at first. They're like, I don't know.
Superman flies in occasionally.
I kept looking. Shouldn't one of them be like going, like standing and pointing and talking about him? They're all like reacting as if there's nothing weird going on at that point until he starts breaking the bottles with the peanuts. Then they're like,
they're like, I guess he really is Superman. He has power. Also, asshole Superman treats everyone like shit. Treats Lana like shit. Lana goes on an emotional roller coaster in this movie because Superman was really friendly to her, had just met her, and this, obviously it's Clark, but Superman's like, it's a pleasure to meet you. Yeah. And, this is your son? Yeah. Here's an autograph for you. And I got to go tell Clark I said hi and that kind of thing. And she's kind of flirting more with him. That's the classic trope. Clark is not around and Superman's literally sitting on her couch. So she's kind of like, I can make you some dinner, Superman. So yeah, he just gets more and more assholey, and then he's doing super acts of vandalism. That's basically
the first thing is where he's in her house when it first starts taking effect.
Yeah.
And the first thing he does as not so good Superman is to not react immediately to a threat that's been reported to him.
Oh, that's right.
And so he
she's
sticks
like,
around
I
and
guess
very
you need
creepily
to go help the people on that bridge. And he's like, they'll be fine.
Yeah. I always show up.
It takes me like a second to get there.
Yeah.
And when he does show up, they're like, they are fine, but we sure could have used you just a minute ago.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah. And that's his last sort of, then he kind of becomes full on asshole.
Full on asshole Superman.
So then, that's when he goes and he messes up the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Blows out the Olympic torch. What else does he do?
Pamela Stevenson's character pretends to be in distress on the I do kind of like this line. She's on the Statue of Liberty and he shows up and goes, "Hope you don't expect me to save you. I don't do that anymore." So dumb.
It is dumb.
So then he goes and he messes up the oil tanker, the one oil tanker that didn't obey the instructions from Ross.
Right. When does he bang
after that? After he sabotages the oil tanker.
And talk about an emotional roller coaster at the end where he's like going, and that guy that you banged, I'm sorry, but he's not coming back.
Yeah.
He's gone.
I don't know you, lady.
I don't know you, lady.
Yeah, basically like, I had sex with you, but you know what? I kissed myself and I don't remember. Jumps back, kiss myself. Who am I? Where am I? Hello?
I do like the scene going back to the bar scene, because after he does all this stuff, that's kind of the culmination of this interval of him being evil. He's not really evil. He's just an asshole. And he goes to the bar, and then Lana and Billy, I guess is his name, the kid, or Timmy. I can't remember what the kid's name is. They see him there, and the kid's like, "Oh, we gotta, he's just in a slump. We got to break him out of it." And Superman kind of stumbles off down the street and flies off. And Lana's like, he can't hear you. He goes, "Yeah, he can. He's got super hearing." Yeah, which is like, makes you think this is what we were saying in the first movie. Mm-hmm. So he shouts out after him, and Clark does hear him as he's flying. Yep. This is the other thing too I like about asshole Superman, the way he flies. He's got different body language as he's flying. He's like, his fists are holding.
It's almost everything is great. Christopher Reeve took the character seriously, gave it a lot of thought.
I know, right? So he does hear the kid shouting at him, and he starts twitching, and that's when he kind of loses control and lands in this junkyard, which is where we have the famous battle with himself.
Yeah,
which again would have been so cool if we knew what this internal conflict he was having was about.
If it had been well written, and it wasn't. I do wonder, is Bad Guy Superman really stupid? Because he throws himself into like a car smasher. Does Bad Guy Superman not know that he is invulnerable to such things?
Yeah, that's
he's like, I took care of him, and then he's like surprised when Good Guy Superman comes back. But yeah, essentially, Good Guy Superman kind of has to strangle the life. Hey, this is where Zack Snyder got the idea out of Bad Superman, and then Bad Superman vanishes, and Good Guy Superman is like, "Oh, thank God, I feel so much better."
Yeah, and he has another suit under his Clark clothes.
Yeah,
I did think it was interesting that it's evil Superman against Clark. So Clark is representing the good side of him.
I played it like the ultimate migraine headache. There's this demon within him. And the demon within him is the good Clark Kent, who is like the albatross around his neck, who limits him, this guy, this fool that he has to act.
Again, it could have been really interesting if they knew why this was happening.
Again, they gave this no thought.
So anyway, so he goes and he flies off. This is one of my funny moments that made me laugh. He goes and fixes the oil tanker, which we talked about already. Yes. A very classic use of his powers, which I thought was actually kind of clever, even though it's a little goofy.
Sure.
Holding the oil in place as he's bending it back and using his heat vision to fix it. And then he waves at the ship captain as he's flying, like, "Hey, all right, everything's fine now." And the ship captain's like, kind of like, "Thanks." He has this kind of weird, like, what? Why? Thanks. It would have been great if you never did it to begin with.
Yeah. Make up your mind, Superman.
By this point, Gus has built this supercomputer.
Yeah.
Which for some reason is built like in the Grand Canyon, I guess. That's right.
Sure. And it's huge. It's like a gigantic computer. The question, I guess, would be, if this was going to be major to the plot, introduce this earlier than it being literally Gus's pet project. It doesn't even tie in, as you pointed out, really, to Webster's plan until he finds out about it. And he's like, "Ooh, what have you been working on?" I'm like, so yeah, there's this enormous computer, and he goes, it can figure out anything's weakness, which is how it's able to figure out when Superman shows up to shoot kryptonite rays at him.
That's kryptonite.
And it's like, wow, it did a better job concocting kryptonite.
Yeah. Well, this is another part too, where the budget really, you can feel the limitations of the budget kind of pushing down on an already bad movie. It's like kind of like, why they clearly spent a lot of money. A lot of the money for the budget clearly went into building that set.
Yeah.
Actually a very well constructed, nicely designed set.
a little goofy, but of its day.
Yeah, he shows up and, okay, weird bubble attack, and he's heat vision, he's out of it. Okay, now what? Then kryptonite ray. Bleh. That's it. That's the whole fight. There's nothing else he does. Then he managed. Anyway.
He actually gets taken out of the fight for a bit, which allows such developments as the Webster's sister becoming a full-on cyborg. I was kind of like, what? Where are we going with this? But still.
And that was, again, I think they spent most of their money in this scene because there's some of the better effects are with the stop motion animation.
And this is their attempt to kind of give you comic book Superman thrills, but on, like, again, as you pointed, just no budget.
Yeah. And this is where it gets kind of weird because
I'm fighting tentacles that are coming out of the thing.
Well, Ross and his sister are trying to kill Superman with the kryptonite ray. And so Gus and the blonde, whose name I can't remember, Pamela Stevenson's character, they don't want to, they're kind of conflicted. They don't want to kill Superman, so they're kind of against it.
Yeah,
so
but that's like a last minute change too.
Well,
like, the computer's getting out of control and it's trying to kill Superman. We don't really want that. Didn't you?
This happens. This is where I'm saying this gets kind of, the motivations get muddled because they're trying to kill him with a ray. And Gus is like, no, you can't kill Superman. I'm going to go down. So he pulls the power. Then the computer regains control, and the ray comes back on.
Yes.
And by this point, the sister, whose name I can't remember the characters' names. She's the ones who's intent on killing Superman with the ray. And then the ray comes back on because the computer it turns itself back on and continues to hurt Superman. And then all of a sudden she wants to turn it off. She's like, oh, no, I can't stop it.
I can't. It's out of control.
It's like, you were just trying to kill him like 3 seconds ago.
I know. That it's just so...
It's like she doesn't even remember, the script doesn't even remember what happened on the page before it. Didn't you want to kill Superman?
Does anyone care that we don't have that in? It doesn't matter.
I'm trying to remember how Superman breaks away. Oh, yeah, that's right. Gus comes out with an axe and destroys the ray thing.
Sure.
To let him escape. And then Superman runs off and gets the acid.
Yes, he goes and gets the acids. Like, that'll fix it. And it does.
I guess it died of acid indigestion.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. All right, I know they have a budget, but this character, Superman, has at this point, when they made this movie, already been around for 40 years? Almost 40 years. No, actually, over 40 years. But anyway, all these adventures they could pull from. It doesn't have to be, I mean, if they don't have the budget, obviously we can't do Brainiac. Well, I think there are ways you could have. Mr. Mxyzptlk, why not? Parasite. There are all kinds of villains from the comics. Storylines, 40 years worth that you could adapt or build off of. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. What if I did this for the movie? Instead, they concoct a completely original story that is in no way original. They concoct an original story with characters that we don't know. Why are we excited about Gus Gorman other than the fact that Richard Pryor is a national treasure, R.I.P.? Well, a Lex Luthor ripoff. Can he only go up against brilliant rich guys? Is that the only thing? And that bugs me for every Superman movie on. It's always Lex. And I love Lex, but it's like, shouldn't we maybe shake that off a little bit? There are plenty of other stories. This is what we got for the third Superman movie. This nonsense. But anyway, so he wins the day, stops the computer. He takes Gus, instead of dropping him off at a jail like he did with Lex, instead he takes him to some sort of mining operation or something. But basically he goes, hey, guys who work here. And they're like, yeah, Superman, do you guys have a computer? Yeah, the boss does. It's a little one. It doesn't really do anything. Then I'm going to give you this man. And he is good with computers, and give him a job. And Gus, instead of going, well, it's kind of funny. Gus is like, really? He's like, yeah, just don't screw up. Be a good dude. And he flies off. And then Gus is like, I don't really want to work.
Yeah,
I do appreciate that. He's like,
it's
going
9 miles to the next town. He's
like going, so where am I? And you guys do what? He goes, how much do you guys make? He's like, I don't want to do that. And he just like, it's 9 miles to the next town.
Yeah.
And that's how Gus's story gets wrapped up. Then off to I don't remember when he gave the ring to Lana. He did at some point.
Well, he makes
Oh yeah,
I guess
he's
that's
at
why
that.
he
He
picks up a
grabs a
piece of
piece of
coal.
coal. Yeah, and he literally does the classic. I am squeezing a piece of coal with ultra pressure. Here's the thing. Plot plot hole here. Even if that's possible, he applies super pressure and turns coal into diamond. It would not be a perfectly chiseled cut diamond. It would be a rough diamond. It would not have facets. Jesus Christ, movie. Anyway, but then he's like, I'm gonna make a ring, give it to Lana, which he does. Isn't that kind of proposing? But that's actually what happens, is that they do a stupid physical comedy where Clark's like, Superman wanted to give you something, and he bumps into like the dinner table, drops something, which causes him to kneel down, as he then turns around and hands the ring to Lana, which is when Brad the
shows
asshole
up.
walks in looking like he is 18 miles of rough road. And he's like, what's going on here? Because it looks like Clark's proposing to Lana. Meanwhile, back in Metropolis, Clark shows up. There's Jimmy with his broken leg. They have a new computerized lottery machine, which is like, oh, look, it can do what people do. It's a computer. And Perry says, I don't know if I like this thing about computers. Okay, great. That was prescient. And then Lois comes back in, and she's like,
fake tan.
Yeah, fake tan.
Horrible fake tan.
Yeah, it's not very good. But she comes like, I had a great time in the Bahamas. And that's when Lois turns around, and there's Lana Lang. She now works at the Daily Planet. And he's like, well, meet Lana Lang. And she's like, Lana Lang. And the claws come out, and they start to roll around, fighting and scratching and fighting and scratching. In the version I have. But no, anyway, so basically at that point, sort of the end of the movie, we just cut to Superman writing it's not as good as I'm not going away again, Mr. President, like bringing the American flag back to the White House. Instead, this is him literally just pushing
the Tower of Pisa.
Leaning Tower of Pisa back into its leaning shape, and the junk souvenir dealers had replaced all their Leaning Tower of Pisa models now with straight ones, but he just bent it again, and now they're like, oh, you're a Superman, I can't believe you. Movie ends with great laughter. I honestly, someone was knocking on my door here in my apartment building at the end of it, and I opened the door. I was like, are you, what's up? And they said, we thought someone was dying in here because the laughing was so loud. And I said, blame Superman 3 is what I said. And they said, we get it.
Yeah.
I hated this movie.
We skipped over one.
Uh-oh.
It's when he hacks the Vulcan satellite the first time to and he doesn't get it right at first because he's drunk and he keeps typing in the wrong thing. And the ATM thing happens where you have that actor from the deputy sheriff actor appears. And then all the crosswalk and traffic lights get messed up in Metropolis. And then the walk and the don't walk things in the sign come to life and start fighting each other.
I don't want to talk about this anymore. Chad,
that
tapped my will.
I know that scene and the opening credits with the slapstick sequence. Again, it's just like, why did anyone
say, let's go with comedy?
Yeah, I know. It's just like, guys, this is not Superman. This is not what Superman is about. This is exactly what Richard Donner was trying to prevent.
To our watchers and listeners, if you have an opposing opinion on Superman 3, actually, look,
some
again,
people like this movie.
Yes, everyone's opinion is legit. But if we've missed a strength of it, feel free to point it out.
Yeah, please.
I will also say that John's friend Ibrahim Mustafa. Hi, Ibrahim. I don't think you watch this podcast, but Ibrahim is a professional comics artist, and through John, I've met him several times. Awesome guy, brilliantly talented, and he's done covers for DC. He's done a couple of Superman covers, and he's done independent comics as well. check out his work. But he's a huge Superman fan. He's younger than us. He's around John's age. I think he's in his 30s. I have not had the big talk with him, and I probably won't till I watch it. But John is completely stunned. Ibrahim's favorite Superman movie of all time is Superman 4, Quest for Peace.
Oh.
And John's like, are you kidding? And that's been a long going thing between them, where it's like, and Ibrahim has reasons. And he loves Christopher Reeve above all the Supermen. Good choice. But yeah, he loves Superman 4. It's his favorite and I'm like, wow. And we've sort of joked about it, but someday I really want to have the talk, and I have to watch Superman 4 first, but I need to know what he's seeing in it. That said, I haven't seen it myself. So I guess we'll be doing that one too.
Well, to that movie's credit, there's a whole lot more Superman in Superman 4 than there is in this movie.
What I think we should do...
It has that going for it.
Yes, this is my pitch. Next week, we take a break, and we talk Penguin and Agatha all along. Neither of which we've really touched on, and they've both wrapped up, and I enjoyed both greatly, and I want to talk about things I really liked.
Yes.
Instead of something that hurt me.
Yeah.
So let's do that, and before we go to the Superman 4 wrap.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Can I do a Brendan recommendance before we go?
Yeah, please.
Okay. 2 things. One is, I do recommend this, but it's pricey. I pre-ordered this the second I found out it was coming out. That is the DC versus Marvel Omnibus.
Ooh, nice.
Yes, this is all of the, well, not quite all, but it is collecting every DC Marvel crossover since 1976's Superman, Spider-Man. And that includes, well, just all of them. One of my favorites is the X-Men New Teen Titans crossover from the 80s was great. All the 90s ones are kind of nuts because they went overboard. The ones this does not include, I mean, this is like $100 some odd, but it's worth it. It's so.
Is it a single book or collection? Oh, single book.
Oh, it's a single book. Yeah, it's one of those omnibus editions.
Goodness gracious.
The reproductions. I mean, it's all great. The only trick is, of course, that the early ones, like Superman, Spider-Man, those were tabloid size. Remember that? The big tall guys?
Yeah.
So to fit them in this format, they had to do a little bit of like, there's a lot of white space down here just so that it fit it in there.
Right.
But it has, of course, that's a scene. One of my favorites of all time is in the second Superman Spider-Man, which was Superman versus the Hulk.
Yes.
So great. Hulk calls him Cape Man. Where's my favorite bit? So when they first meet, Hulk punches him and sends him like 8 miles, and Superman lands. He's like, whew. Then he gets back. He goes, okay, before I wasn't ready. Now come at me. And he just stands there while Hulk pounds away at him. And he's like, you should be moving. And he goes, when I'm ready and I don't want to be moved, no power on earth can move me. But his thought balloon is, with luck, he'll wear himself out trying, because he's getting stronger and stronger and stronger too, because the madder Hulk gets, the stronger he gets. So anyway, this is great. What I was going to say is the things it doesn't have are coming out in a second volume, which of course I also pre-ordered. Do you remember in the 2000s when they did DC versus Marvel, like the limited series, where they actually, each universe had to fight the other to win, and the one that didn't win would get wiped out of existence?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that in a previous episode.
Yeah, that's not in here.
I checked out of comics completely during that.
The reason they didn't put it in here is because the result of that miniseries led to the amalgam age of comics.
Right. Yeah, you
that
did mention
entire
that.
almost a year, I think, of comics where DC and Marvel combined and blended its characters. So the next one of these big guys is going to collect all the amalgam stuff and DC versus Marvel.
Nice.
The one that isn't in either of the books, and it's out of print. I'm glad to have the Absolute Edition, which is one of those big tall ones of JLA Avengers, which is my favorite DC Marvel crossover of all time. So good. Kurt Busiek writing it, George Perez drawing it. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay. So that one, I don't know why it's out of print and why they didn't include it in there. It is long, and that would make that book even bigger. Okay,
Yeah.
second recommendins, and you are familiar with these. We've talked about this all the time, but we really haven't done a direct shout out. Superman 78.
Oh, you got it. You got the new book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to go ahead and get that. Yeah.
So basically, there have been 2 miniseries that DC has put out, just like they did with Batman 66. These aren't in continuity. That's awesome. They basically said there are fans of Batman that still love Adam West. Of course. Why wouldn't you? So they did a whole bunch of miniseries set in the Batman TV universe, written, they're drawn exactly like they are in the TV show, and they have the campy humor. It's fun. Then they got the brilliant idea, let's do Wonder Woman 77. Same idea, like the TV show continued, only with better writers. Comics writers get it.
Yeah.
And I love the Wonder Woman TV show as a kid, but whenever a real comics person takes over, case in point, they of course did Superman 78, which instead of watching Superman 3, which I highly recommend you don't, this is the sequel we kind of always wanted, where again, drawn as Margot Kidder, drawn as Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman, but expanding, like they can have the budget you always wanted. So a Brainiac story, but set in 1978, a sequel to the original 2 films.
And Donner Mankiewicz did have plans to do Brainiac, either in 3 or 4.
Yeah, I know, and that hurts to find out. It's like they were going to go ahead with it.
Yep.
The writer Robert Venditti did amazing work with this. The artist Wilfredo Torres, I've seen him on other stuff, great. Jordi Belair, I believe, is the colorist, also great. I mean, it's just, it hits the right spot, and when you read it, it feels like the next movie that you would have wanted.
And there's a different artist in Metal Curtain, right?
Metal Curtain is a different artist, but again, look how good that is right there.
Nice.
But just keeping true to Christopher Reeve and the look of the 1978 films. So this is the sequel to Superman 78, and it's a brilliant idea of taking the Metallo character, but making him sort of a product of Soviet propaganda, because obviously late 70s, early 80s, the new Cold War. So Metallo, classic Superman villain, but given a Soviet twist. And Luthor is still in this. And again, it is Venditti again. Gavin Guidry, I think, is how you pronounce it, but he's the artist for this one.
Okay.
And it's just great. And didn't we hear from one of the letterers?
We did. I was about to say, Dave Lanfear. If I'm saying your name wrong, I'm sorry. But Dave has watched our stuff. He commented on our review of Superman 2, I think.
Dave, I didn't mean to leave you out when I was saying that. Listen,
because he noticed I've had Superman 78 behind me for many of our episodes, and he saw it and said, "Man, thanks for putting that up there. It's been a dream come true working on these comics." Because he was a letterer.
Anyone of the creative team that got to do it, because it's sort of like getting the keys to the kingdom. The only thing better would have been, of course, to be able to make one of these as an actual film. But that entire team, and I will also say thank you, DC, for thinking this was viable. They also did Batman 89, and the second miniseries of that is coming out. So they've already done one. It was great, picked up where the second movie left off. Again, they're pretending that Batman Forever and Batman and Robin did not happen. So it's what Sam Hamm, the screenwriter, one of the screenwriters of the original Batman 89, is the guy writing the comic. He's like, had I been able to continue writing for Tim Burton, this was my take on Robin. This was my take on Batgirl. And of course, you finally get Billy D. Williams as Two-Face, which was what we would have had if Burton had kept going. So highly recommended both of those. The DC versus Marvel is just, I mean, not all of them are great. Some of you just sit there going like, geez, man, this is nuts. But I read all of them back in the day, and it's just nostalgia kick. I mean, technically this is also nostalgia, but it's brand new stories just set in that time period. So do yourselves a favor. If you're a Superman fan, get these.
Yeah.
Support your local comic shop as well, please. Go get it
Yep.
from there. Don't get it from Amazon. And that DC versus Marvel, if you got a spare big old chunk of change, that's good eats. All right.
That's great, man.
Yeah. You want to recommend something or wrap up, or what do we do now?
No, I think I'm gonna recommend that we shut this puppy down.
Yeah.
Get ready for next.
Literally, the stomach acid is starting to rise again because I thought about Superman 3 again. So let's cut her off. I did it, guys. All these years later, I saw it, and it was painful. So I've got one more of the I've never seen them. Oh, that's not true. Haven't seen Batman v Superman either.
People have asked us to do Supergirl as well, which I don't think either of us have seen.
No, I've seen Supergirl.
Oh, you saw it? Okay.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But again, I cannot fault the casting. Helen Slater looks like the comic book come to life. It's just the movie around her is bullshit.
We've also had requests to dig a little deeper into some of the alternate cuts of Superman, like the 3 hour and possibly the director's cut.
Oh,
so
I think
we have.
I mean, we could do that. It's just that all we'd be talking about is the additional material.
Yeah, that's what they're asking. Is like, so I think maybe we could just make a
Superman
list of what was
through
cut
the
out.
Gauntlet of flamethrowers and machine guns. All for it.
Oh yeah. So was Donner. He put it back in his director's cut.
Yes,
special edition.
Yes, he did.
So anyway, there's lots of stuff to go through, but we've been reaching a lot of new people these past few weeks. We love you all. Thank you so much for chiming in. Tell us what you think.
Thanks, guys. Yes, we appreciate you guys chiming in, and it really is awesome to hear from all kinds of viewpoints, and not just about Superman. We occasionally get people going like, "Holy mackerel! I finally saw
Batman."
Yeah. This one or that one. I saw that, and I'm like, "Great, let's talk about it." I'm looking forward to next week talking about 2 excellent TV series from this year. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right. Much
Peace
more to
out,
come.
out.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Oh, ouch.
Yeah, I don't know. It started going. It wouldn't stop. It just... Okay. Again, on my planet, this means hope. It also means I live in a world where Superman 3 didn't happen. That's called the multiverse.
You lucky
I know.
bastard.